Okay, this is Math 2, Unit 10, Lesson 3. We're doing homework notes. You do not have to write this up on the topic. Homework notes is what we're working on. And I've already read number 1 to you guys. A golfer hits a ball from the fairway to the green. The flight of the ball is modeled by this equation. Please make that change. Where x is the time, I'm going to underline that. X is the time in seconds since the ball was hit, and g of x is the height of the ball in feet. We're going to learn how to graph this and how to read the graph. I will tell you right now that these are type of tests come test day. All right, preparing to sketch. Add labels to the axes, including variables, descriptions, and words, and units. Okay, so we're going to label. This is the x-axis. What did they say the x represents? Okay, so I'm going to put time down here. This is the y-axis. What letter did we say was used here instead of y? G of x. What does g of x represent? The height of the ball. Okay, so I'm going to put here height. All right. Questions on time and height. This is x, and this is g of x. Okay, so what happens when the ball is hit? The height goes higher and higher and higher. What happens over time? Does that ball go up forever? No. What eventually happens? Okay, so will it reach a maximum height? And then it's going to come back down. Does that make sense? Okay, so what shape did we just model right there? The shapes that we've been working with? Parabola, the quadratics, right? Parabolas, it goes up and up and up, reaches its max, and come down, down, down. Okay, so, and do you agree this function right here is a quadratic because of the squared? Yes. What form is this? Vertex form or standard form? Vertex. So is this the one where we do opposite of the inside, outside stays the same? Yes. Okay. So add labels to the axes. We did that. Okay. Focus on the equation used in the model. Used to model the ball's flight. What will the graph look like? Be as specific as possible. Okay. So we know it's going to look like, what shape did we just say? Parabola. So write that down. It will look like a parabola. Now, let's be as specific as we can about the parabola. According to this negative, which way is this parabola going to be opening? Down. Opens down. And does it make sense that it's opening down when we talked about going up, reaching its max, and then coming down? Okay. Which way is it translating? This -2 means which direction? The inside is right or left. The outside is up or down. So this -2 means which direction? Right. 2. And what does the 64 on the outside mean? So is it going up or down 64? Up 64. Okay, why do I change only one sign and not the other? Because it's opposite of the inside. Outside stays the same. +2, so that's right 2 and up 64. Is it wide, thin, or normal? Ignore the negative. Is 16 bigger than 1 or smaller than 1? So what's going to happen? Is it getting bigger or thinner? It's getting really thin. Do you agree? Okay, let's at least plot the vertex. If I move right 2 and up 64, and before I do that, it does say scale each axis. So all the important features of the graph will show. I'm going to write the vertex here. I'm going to put V for vertex. If I move right 2 and up 64, what's my vertex going to be? 264. Do you guys agree? We talked about that yesterday. Opposite of the inside, outside stays the same. Does everybody see that? Okay, so over 2, up 64. Before we label that here, my x-axis, I only need it to be big enough to fit the 2, so is it okay to count by ones? Yes, I need to not only count the 2, but a little bit right and left. So I'm going to count by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, and 20. All right. The height, what's the maximum height? What is the vertex? Over 2 and up how high? So I need to have 64. Is it okay if I count by ones on this one? No. So check if counting by fives would get it all, or if we have to count by tens. I'd like to count by fives if we can. If not, then we have to count by tens. Can you guys check if fives would work? Yes, it will? Okay. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70. Can you guys please verify that I did that correctly? Yes, are we good? Okay, so let's move right to up 64. So here I go right to and up 64. So it's right below the 65. Does everyone agree that would be my vertex? Right to up 64. Okay, we know, you don't have to use a ruler for this part, I'm going to, but we know that the axis of symmetry always goes through the vertex. Would you guys agree with that? Yes? So I am going to plug in, I'm going to pause here. You guys will need calculators today, so if you don't have one already, will you please quickly grab one? Not your phones, your own scientifics or some of the baby ones up front. Quickly grab them, please. If the people on the inside can grab for everyone, so not everyone has to get up. Thank you. All right. Okay, guys, we know it's opening down. We know it's thin. We know parabolas are symmetrical across this axis of symmetry. So I'm going to pick a point. We're going to plug it in. We're going to see what happens. I'm going to try to pick the easiest point I can. So I'm going to plug in 0. So I'm going to have you guys plug 0 into that equation. You can do your work here or a separate piece of paper. I'm just going to put y instead of g of x. Y equals negative 16, 0 minus 2 squared plus 64. Can you guys go ahead and work that out? Order of operation, you do what's in the parentheses first, then square it, then multiply it, then add. Do that now. What's 0 minus 2? Negative 2. And what's negative 2 squared? Positive 4. Make sure you sign that, okay? All right, so negative 16 times negative 2 squared plus 64. Negative 16, did you guys say that comes out to be positive 4? Has anybody multiplied negative 16 by 4 yet? What do you get? And negative 64 plus 64 is what? 0. So I have an ordered pair. If I plug in 0, what's my answer? 0. I'm going to write it over here. Do you agree that 0, 0, that point is at the origin? Yes or no? All right. What's nice about parabolas is it's symmetrical. So if this point is 2 away from the axis of symmetry, what can I do on the other side? Can I go 2 away on this side and mark a dot? Yes. How do I know this other dot exists? Because the axis of symmetry, the parabola is symmetrical across this line. Does that make sense? Okay, so that is enough for us. I'm going to use that vertex and those 2 points to make my parabola. I am going to be erasing a little bit. So if you're working in pen, just hold off a little bit. Okay. I'm going to be erasing a little bit of this, so if you're working in pen, you're going to want to hold off. All right, do you guys agree so far that's what we have? The vertex, we know that point's there, we know that point's there, we know it's opening down and thin. Yes or no? Okay, we've done C. Why does it make sense that this graph is only in the first quadrant? So I'm going to have to fix this. Right now I have arrows on my parabola, which means it's going down forever. And it's also getting what forever? Wider. Now that is incorrect. That's the part I'm going to erase. I'm going to erase those arrows, and I'm going to fix it like this. Sorry. All right, so I'm erasing the arrows. I'm starting at 0, I'm going up, coming down, and I'm ending right there. It looks like it's 4. Do you guys agree that would be 4? If that was 0 and I went 2 over and another 2, that would be 4. Yes or no? Okay, so I want you guys to think for a few seconds. Why does it make sense? Why did I erase the stuff here at the bottom? Yes?
Because it's the ground, you can't go below the ground.
Okay, because it's the ground, I can't go below the ground. Were you? Same thing? Right, it's not going to go, okay, so he's saying height, I'm not going to have negative height. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
So why don't I go over this way to the negative side? Because what do these values over here represent? Time. And do I have negative time? No. So right in here, time is not negative and height is not negative. Time and height, because that's what my x and y axis are, time and height are not negative. Does everybody agree? Yes? Does that make sense? Does anybody know what this point here represents? That's the point at which the golf ball starts. It goes high, high, high. What does this point right here represent?
It's the highest it goes.
The highest it goes. How long, according to this graph, how long does it take to reach that max height?
2 seconds.
2 seconds. What does this side represent? The ball is what? Descending. It's coming back down. Does anybody know what that point right there represents?
4 seconds.
4 seconds. But what does it represent as far as the ball? It's when the ball does what? Hits the ground. Do you guys agree? The height is 0 when the ball hits the ground. So how long does it take for the ball to hit the ground? 4 seconds. All right. Use your graph to identify the domain and range and make sense for this problem. Guys, I need everybody listening. Here is where kids mess up. What's the answer that we have been doing forever for domain? All reals. And I heard him say it is not all reals, and that is correct. All reals for a parabola means the graph does what forever? It gets, and is this graph getting wider forever? No. It starts here, it stops there. That's as wide as it gets. Okay, so what we have to do is write an inequality. I am going to write 2 separate ones, and we're going to condense it because you need to know that for the test. Okay, first one. What x value is this? 0. And to the right of 0 is positive or negative? Is that getting bigger or smaller? So I'm going to say x is greater than or equal to 0. Now, if I left it like this, please put your phones away. If I left it like this, that means the graph goes on forever. Does it go on forever to the right? No. So I'm going to put and x is less than or equal to, where does that stop? 4. Do you guys agree I would use less than equal to because I don't go bigger than the 4? It's smaller than 4 and bigger than 0. Does that make sense? My x value, these are the only x values I have. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because after that it hits the ground. Before that, time is negative. Does that make sense? So the only numbers I can use, x is sandwiched between 0 and 4. So this is how you're going to see it on the test. X is literally sandwiched between 0 and 4. x is greater than or equal to 0 and x is less than or equal to 4. X is greater than or equal to 0 and x is less than or equal to 4. We just write it as a sandwich problem. The smaller number always goes first, the bigger number always goes second, and your inequalities will always open this way if you've done it correctly. Questions on the new domain for this problem? Okay, range. Range was never all reals for us on parabolas, so let's start with what we know. Is it going up or down? This graph here, is it going upward or is the graph going downward? So what would I say? Y is greater than equal to or less than equal to? Less than equal to what y value does it start from? It's kind of hard to see in the graph, so you might need to look at the numbers over here. That point there is 264. So y is less than or equal to what? 64. Now if I leave it like this, that means it goes down forever. Does it go down forever? No. So I'm going to put and. Y is, it stops at what y value? Right here. What's this y value right here? 0. So I would say greater than or equal to 0. That means y, or the graph, has y where y is between 0 and 64. Do you agree that's where my graph is included, between 0 to 64? Yes or no? Yes, my graph goes from 0, the lowest point, 64, the highest point. So interval notation, what number would come first? 0. And this is not interval notation, I apologize. 0 less than or equal to x, less than or equal to what number? 64. And I messed up. Can anybody tell me where I messed up? The x, what should that be? Y. All right. That's how it's going to look on the test. You need to know what that means. X is bigger than 0, smaller than 4. It is. Y is bigger than 0, smaller than 64. 0 to 64, it is. Any questions? All right, so now let's answer the questions. What is the maximum height of the ball? We've talked about that already. It says answer the following questions based on the flight of the ball. What is the maximum height of the ball?
64 feet.
Can you guys agree it's never going to get higher than 64? According to the graph and how we looked at all this, what's the maximum height? So write that down for part F, 64 feet. Okay, how do you know? Anyone? How do you know that that's the maximum height?
That's where the thing stops at, or like
That's where what? That's the highest point. Is that what you were saying? That's the maximum point? Okay, so the max value is y equals 64. Would you guys agree? That's what you guys were saying? Yes? The max value of the graph is y equals 64. And does y represent the height? Okay. How high is the ball after 3 seconds? Can I tell that from the graph? If I use the graph, am I going to get an exact answer or like an estimate? Okay, so if I want an exact answer, would I use the graph or the original function? The function. Okay, so y equals, and that's a question that will come up later, x minus 2 squared plus 64. The graph is nice, but if you're looking for exact answers, you will want to plug it into the equation. Okay, what am I going to plug 3 into? If 3 seconds, will I plug that into x or to y? Sorry. 3 seconds, will I plug that into x or to y? X. All right, so you guys have your calculators, and I changed g of x to y. That's okay. If you want to leave it g of x, that's fine as well. 3 minus 2 squared plus 64. I want you guys working that out. So this 3, we plugged in right there. Should it be higher than 64? Could it be higher than 64? No, because 64 is the what? Maximum height. All right, plug it in. What happens at 3 seconds? Is it on its way up or on its way down?
Down.
It's on its way down, yes.
the height's at 48.
48. Did anybody else get that?
No.
Still working? Any of you still working? Okay. Isaac, so you do 3 minus 2 because that's the order of operation. So we have negative 16. What is 3 minus 2? 1 squared plus 64. Order of operation, I do 1 squared. What is 1 squared? So negative 16 times 1 plus 64. What is negative 16 times 1? And then negative 16 plus 64 is what you're plugging in your calculator. Or 64 minus 16, it works out the same. What do we get? 48. So 48 seconds or 48 feet? Feet. We want to make sure that we are labeling. How long is the ball in the air? Goes up, 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 down, 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 down. It's how long is that? 4 seconds. It's on its way up for 2 seconds. It's on its way down for 2 seconds. So total of what?
4 seconds.
4 seconds. How do you know?
Because that's the biggest X value.
Did we use the graph? Yeah. Use the graph, and you said what? That's the
Max value
max value?
of X.
Okay, so we're looking at the x-axis. So use the graph, look at, can we call those x-intercepts? Yep, it starts at 0, ends at 4. Yes? All right, questions? Yes?
On the test, instead of using GX, like if you used Y, would you get it wrong?
No. No. Okay, any questions? All right, I want you guys flipping over